Okay, in this code, we're going to get a little bit more complicated. We're going to create a loop, a for next loop, and we're going to ask the user to enter in an employee ID in an input box, and then we're going to loop through all the records starting in row 2 all the way to the last row. So we don't know how many employees are going to be populated in the spreadsheet. So we don't want to hard code up to row 8. We want to make it flexible. So to begin, I just copied the previous program. So this is just showing the last row. I'm going to define I, since we're going to be doing a loop. And then I'm going to set up my for next loop. For I, I'm starting in row 2 because we have a heading, and there's no sense. We could look for started at 1, but we know row 1 is always going to have the heading. From rows 2 and below, we don't know how many rows there are going to be. So we have to set up our loop for I equals 2 to last row. Now I've got an error in here already because I have to compute last row prior to getting in the loop. So I'm going to cut and paste that above. And I'm also going to get the input from the user. So I'm going to set employee ID equal to input box, enter employee ID. I'll define employee ID. Also as long. I have the spreadsheet set up to be numeric in column 1. So I'm looping through the records, and now I want to check to see if the contents of column 1 is equal to what they input. So I'm going to have an if statement. If I'm looking at row I and column 1 is equal to employee ID, then I want to include a message box that tells me their name. So I'm just going to concatenate a phrase here, employee ID and I want to show their name from column 2. And I forgot my concatenate symbols. Okay, let's test this. So far I've got, I'm setting last row by counting the number of rows. I'm setting employee ID via an input box. And then I'm looping through all the records from starting in row 2 to the bottom. And if the employee ID equals what the user input, if the cells in column 1 equal what the user input, then they should get a message box showing the name of the employee along with the ID that they entered. So let's go ahead and test it. So I'll enter 301 and I get my result. If I enter something that is not found, it should just finish.